It was always this coming, I'm broken and I have to fix myself, but then I'm still identified as someone who had an experience that made me broken, which makes me hypervigilant to not get hurt again. And so it's not very empowering. It's you had this experience, so now you have to, heal it and then keep the barriers up and watch for the red flags for this not happening again. Hello, welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions with Creative Mind. I'm Deborah Maldonado. I'm here with Dr. Rob Maldonado.
Nice to be here.
And before we begin our session today, I wanted to invite you to subscribe to our channel. If you're on YouTube, just click the button here in the corner of the video. If you are listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, or another podcast broadcasting service, please be sure to subscribe there as well, so you can receive every episode. And so this episode is called How Trauma Impacts Your Mind Body. And Rob, why are we doing this series? It's our new series on the mind body.
Yeah, and we've been wanting to do a series on the mind body for a while now, but the opportunity is finally here because Creative Mind University is launching a new mind body program called Creative Mind Wellness. So in honor of that, we're going to be presenting some of the topics that we're interested in and that are relevant to mind-body issues.
And I want to just say what is unique about our mind-body system and our training, the mind-body coach training, is it's based on Eastern philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and also the latest techniques in working with the mind, meditation, guided imagery, and all pain management and all these wonderful tools that we have that we believe helps the person free their mind body from pain, from suffering, from illness, helping them really have longevity and happiness in their bodies, in their mind. We know that stress is really the number one reason why people seek medical attention. So if we can train coaches to help others in a very empowering way to work with their mind body, I think the world will be a better place and people will be much happier. So that's really our mission.
Absolutely. So let's start with some stats. This is from a study that looked at 24 countries around the world. So it wasn't a small one. It was a big study. And what they found, on average, about 70% of people experience some kind of traumatic event in their life. That's a lot of people, 70%. And about 30% of people experience 4 or more traumatic events in their life. Now, it has a cumulative effect. That's why they mention these 4 or more episodes, because people that don't process that first experience then are at risk of having another traumatic experience in their life.
It's almost like they attract it in, or they seem to, because they see the world in a certain way, they start to be unconsciously drawn to more situations like that.
Yeah, I guess that could be part of it. Also, that people that experience one or more are probably in environments that are chaotic. Right? They're more prone to experiencing difficult situations.
And we know from psychology that people tend to stay in the same situations even if it's not helpful, because it's comfortable.
Absolutely.
Versus making changes. So this episode is really about how trauma impacts the mind body, but we have all our other episodes are going to be on different topics, but today we're going to specifically talk about trauma. And so why does the body hold on to trauma? Why does it do that? And why can't we just have the experience and then forget about it and then live on with our lives? Why do we hang on to it?
Yeah, so the consequences of trauma, they range, and they really impact what we call the mind body, because they can range from chronic inflammation, meaning some kind of digestive problem, some kind of heart disease problem, all the way to full-blown PTSD, where we see individuals really traumatized by past experiences where they're reliving a lot of those difficult experiences continuously in their mind, in their dreams.
So they're having nightmares, they're triggered all the time. So it's that extreme. But if you think about 70%, not all of us have that extreme. A lot of us have these things that trigger us and bother us. And then even just stress, chronic stress from trying to protect yourself can impact the body.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of us have subclinical presentations of PTSD, meaning we've gone through difficult things that we really haven't had the time or opportunity to process properly, and they're impacting our mind-body wellness, our health.
It's almost like I don't know any person that doesn't go through life without something. I mean, we all have to deal with death and illness, and we're sick when we're kids, or we have someone that dies when we're younger, or a divorce that happened. Like a lot of things get being bullied at school, a lot of different things that happen in just an ordinary life. So I would find that it would be hard to find someone who did not have those issues in some degree.
Absolutely.
So
so back to your question, how does or why does the mind body hold on to those difficult experiences in the first place? Like if you think of PTSD, okay, somebody goes through a war, somebody experiences a flood, a crash, a car crash. The mind body sees those experiences as important lessons for the individual. In other words, it's saying, if this is going to be part of your experience in the world, and this is the kind of world that you're living in, pay attention to these traumatic experiences because you want to survive them.
Because it assumes you most likely will not change your environment and it's going to be showing up again.
That's right. It's saying this is an important experience. Remember it. And at the cellular level, the mind body absorbs it and takes it in and says, I am holding on to this so I can learn from it. The problem comes in when they have no opportunity to process that experience properly. They try to soothe it, they drink it away, they use drugs, or they might even go to some kind of healing or therapy, but often it's to treat the symptoms, the anxiety, the depression, the panic attacks, the nightmares, instead of getting at the root of that experience.
A lot of times pharmacology, here, take this pill, it'll take the edge off type of thing as well.
Yes.
And so and I love this idea that, love the idea, but it's this idea that it's really made for our survival. That it's saying pay attention because it's trying to protect us. It's like
Absolutely.
A protective mechanism versus seeing it as something broken in you. It's actually a healthy mind does this. And it reminds me of this is a great analogy, is imagine back when we were cavemen. There were two cavemen going out hunting. They were hunters, and they were going out into the wild while everyone's safe at camp. And there was a rustle in the bush, and it goes shh. And then all of a sudden a tiger jumps out, and one of the guys is watching the other guy get eaten by the tiger, which is traumatic. So he gets into fight or flight response and says, I got to get out of here. This is dangerous. I'm not going to survive. And he gets first he tightens up, and then all this adrenaline fills his body so he can run away from the tiger. So it's this really an excellent system that our body has to protect ourselves and give us the energy to move away from danger. But the problem is the next time he goes out to hunt, he hears that rustle in the bush, and immediately he goes into fight or flight. He doesn't even see the tiger yet. And then a bird flies out of the bush. And so that's really when we talk about a body hanging on to it, it hangs on to the thing or the things in the environment that are associated with that event, not necessarily the actual thing that happened or the actual perpetrator. So that's why it feels so like illogical. Like, why do I get so stressed about a loud noise or loud voices, or when someone's angry or hearing a certain sound? Why do I get sensitive to that? And that rustle in the bush isn't the threat, but it's the thing that happened before the threat. So it's weird, and it makes sense, right? Why the mind would do that, because why make you upset during the threat? It's like, let's take it a step back, rework it, and protect you before it even happens. So it's really a powerful system that we have. Thank God we're not chasing, hunting for our food anymore, but we still operate from that same type of old part of our brain.
Very much so. That's right. The modern world has changed around us, the environment, but the internal structure of our mind body is still very ancient. It is essentially the identical system that was operating back in the Paleolithic times when we lived in caves, like you said.
And so what happens when they're replaying that over and over again? What does that mean when someone keeps obsessing over things that happen? And I could just say, even not a traumatic event, but me being single for so long, I used to replay like why this person left or why this relationship didn't work out. What did I do wrong? And I was constantly trying to get my way out of being hurt again. And or when I was liking someone, this part of my mind was being protective. So it works not only in life-threatening abuse or, really dark things, traumatic things that happen to people, but also even just emotional hurt is there to protect. So why does it replay it over and over?
Yes. So the idea is that anything that's replayed, like a recurrent dream or a recurring nightmare, the mind is saying you haven't paid attention or proper attention to this. So it brings it back up so that we can master it, so we can deal with it.
It's like a knock at the door, like, hey, I'm still out here. I'm still operating.
Yes. The idea is simply like this. Our body has a homeostasis mechanism, meaning it's always trying to find a balance within neurotransmitters, hormones, blood pressure, everything. It's trying to always keep that balance. And it does it naturally. The mind has a similar mechanism. Whenever there are things that we experience in our mind that we haven't processed appropriately yet, it brings them back up so that we can pay attention to them. The problem, again, is simply that usually the individual doesn't have the proper tools to process those difficult emotions, that experience. So that's where therapy and coaching come in. They can help the individual make meaningful sense of those experiences.
So like using the content in a different way than just thinking it as this is a bad thing and I need to get rid of it or I need to cope with it. It's like, what's another possibility here?
What's another possibility? Exactly. And how can I use this in a creative way in my life? And that's really the ideal. Let's say if I or you that I knew we had gone through some difficult, traumatic experience, the ideal would be let's work with people that it can help us make sense of this and make a meaningful work out of it.
Yeah. Instead of feeling like a victim and feeling like it's a life sentence because you had this experience, you're forever broken, that there is a way out. And like, I love what you always say is a sign of a healthy mind that you have this response. It's not, something's not broken in you. It's working the way it is. It's just from that old perspective. And now you can always change your perspective. So what would be the difference? So how would you work with trauma? Coaching versus therapy?
Yeah, so that's a great question because it often comes up in our training. We train coaches, and some of them are our therapists. So the question comes up, what is the difference in the approach? And in some forms, it's very subtle, but in some forms, it's very obvious, right? The obvious side, obviously, is that in coaching, we're moving the high-functioning individual towards their full potential, whereas in therapy, often it's bringing people up from subpar functioning, meaning their functioning is lowered because of their traumatic experiences or the condition, depression or anxiety. And we're helping them rise to the level of normality, right?
So it's like
whatever that means.
that's the best you can do, almost like let's
Yeah.
get you to normal. But I always found that for me, the years of doing a lot of self-help work and having healers work with me, it was always this coming. I'm broken and I have to fix myself, but then I'm still identified as someone who had an experience that made me broken, which makes me hyper vigilant to not get hurt again. And so it's not very empowering. It's that you had this experience, so now you have to, heal it and then keep the barriers up and watch for the red flags for this not happening again. So it doesn't feel like you really transcended the experience. It's just you learned how to manage it in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And of course, we're oversimplifying it because there are very good therapists that are specialize in working with traumatized individuals and families, and are really able to help people in a very profound way. But what we see, and certainly what the research indicates, is that most people, and remember, 70% of the planet essentially has been traumatized in some form or another. Most people are not able to find proper treatment for their conditions or their trauma. And so
It feels like they've been working on it for years. Maybe.
Yeah, they've been doing patchwork on it, right? They might read a book and it helps them a little bit. They might go to a seminar or a healing weekend or something, and it helps them in some form. But they're not getting the systematic, comprehensive approach to helping them process these difficult experiences.
And getting to the root, basically, where what's keeping them replaying this in their mind, what's not allowing them to be free. So
absolutely.
What's the first step is how do you look at the client differently?
Yes. So if we, like we were saying in the beginning, right? If we take the best of the yoga philosophy, the Eastern wisdom traditions, and the best of current neuroscience, which really most of the research now comes from psychoneuroimmunology, meaning how does the mind impact the immune system? Because that kind of gets at that connection, right, of the mind-body. If we combine what we know from those two traditions, the best picture that emerges is that our approach should be to look at the individual as a mind-body, meaning the mind-body is working together. Their mind,
Not the mind and then the body.
That's right. Their body went through an experience and their mind interpreted that experience in a certain way.
So it's like thoughts and feelings. People separate them. Like if I just change my thoughts, but it's a thought-feeling dynamic.
Absolutely.
It's together.
And it's together, and you can't separate it. Although in modern medicine, it's often separated, right? You go to the emergency room and they treat your symptoms without asking you, what is the meaning of this to you, right? They don't care about what meaning you make out of it. Meaning they're separating the body and the mind.
Anytime I went to the doctor never mentioned, so what's going on in your personal life? Are you stressed out? Do you have any major changes in your life? No, it's more like, okay, this is what the biology is showing me.
Yes.
But now things are changing now because a lot of physicians, a lot of medical companies are starting to realize that there is this mind-body connection. Right?
Well, yes and no. Yes, there's more awareness and more education and more information, certainly from the internet. People can look these things up now. But ironically, I guess because life is more stressful, less people are accessing those that kind of information. And so there's more people that are traumatized, more people that are stressed, more people that
know what to do with it.
That are not getting that proper treatment. So anyway, back to the philosophy then. If we take the best of the Eastern wisdom and current neuroscience, the picture that emerges is, yes, there's this mind-body that is experiencing traumatic events and holding on to them because it's a survival mechanism. But also from the Eastern tradition, we get the understanding that we are neither the mind nor the body, nor the mind body together.
So we didn't experience the true self. Never experienced had the experience of the trauma, but it's not impacted by it.
That's it. That the awareness, the consciousness that is allowing that mind body to experience the world, and in which the mind body is experiencing the world, is not damaged by that experience. Now that's a radical departure from modern medicine,
Absolutely.
from healing systems, from so many ways that people have been trying to
Treat their trauma.
yes,
Yeah.
to treat their trauma, exactly.
Versus transcend it.
Yes, versus transcend it. Now, we're not saying because the awareness, the pure awareness in the human being cannot be damaged to neglect the trauma.
And just say, well, that didn't happen, like almost like repress it or deny how you feel, or say this isn't real, so I'm not going to pay attention to these emotions
Yes.
or this trigger.
That's right. We're not saying it's not real. It certainly happened because you experienced it, right? And your mind held on to it and has interpreted it as a traumatic event. The difference in this approach is simply that we're questioning what is the nature of that experience. If we look at the body as a machine, we can certainly say, well, the machine was damaged because it impacted the neurotransmitters, or part of the mind body was damaged, physically damaged, it had to be repaired, and therefore it's permanently damaged, right? It's scarred in some way. Then that makes sense. But if we look at the individual in that bigger perspective, that we are the pure awareness, the consciousness that allows the mind body to experience the world, and that mind body, that consciousness that it allows the mind body to exist cannot be damaged, then we see that it doesn't matter what the experience is, how traumatic, how injurious it was to the mind body, the true self in the individual is undamaged. It cannot be hurt.
So basically, a simple way of thinking about it is that I may have had this experience that affected my mind body, but there's also an aspect of myself that has not been damaged. So you're introducing, so instead of saying I'm all damaged, like every aspect of me is damaged and I got to heal it, and then one day I could be better, you're saying there's a part of you that's already healed, that's already whole. And how can you magnify or open up that other part of your consciousness so then you can really truly process it in a more conscious way and be a more aware way. So it's like it's already almost like the healed part is already there instead of it's something to attain.
Very much so. Not only that the traumatic experience itself, meaning the pain of living, the pain of being alive, human suffering, let's say, universal, is pointing to the true nature of the individual. In other words, it's forcing you to ask that question: what happened to me? What is the meaning of my suffering here?
It's like a wake-up call.
It's a wake-up call, exactly. It's a natural progression in the stages of awareness. That first you become aware of yourself as a body, right? When we're babies, we're crawling around, touching things, and experiencing the world. And then we start to get a sense that, oh, there's this mind inside of me kind of observing and experiencing and feeling. Then the next stage, which most people don't get to because they think that's all there is that internal mind, that's who I am, right? That sense of I, the ego, they believe that's who they are. And so they stop. But when there is this suffering in our lives, it's an opportunity to go deeper and to ask the question, is there anything else? Is there like a deeper foundation in me that I can count on instead of just trying to ease my suffering at the ego level.
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of reminds me of the Matrix, where he says you could take the red pill or the blue pill. You can stay unconscious and live your life and chase the fantasies of, making more money or getting that partner and all the human experiences. But then in the suffering, it really forces us to stop and make a choice. It's actually, if everything was going well in our life, we probably would be so externalized to the illusion of the world being all there is. But when we suffer, we're forced to turn inward. We're forced to look in. So how could that be bad? It's the suffering itself is uncomfortable, but that discomfort leads us to ask bigger questions. So it's like you said, it's that meaning, finding meaning in that experience that can be a catalyst for something even greater.
Yeah, so often the best coaches are people that have gone through this experience themselves, right? They've come to the work because of their suffering, and they've found a way to transcend it. In other words, they've made meaning out of their suffering and of their experience.
Like Viktor Frankl?
Like Viktor Frankl, exactly. Viktor Frankl was in the concentration camps. If you can imagine any worse scenario of the human condition than that, I mean, that was the most horrible experience a human being could have. He found that making that a part of his mission, to keep that idea of life that you can transcend anything, any experience life can throw at you, no matter how terrible, that was his message, his meaning in life. Then it transforms and your purpose. It gives you your purpose in a sense, and it allows you to keep on moving in a meaningful way and not to let it crush you. So that was the great lesson.
Well, you have two
Viktor
choices.
Frankl.
You can let it just crush you and defeat you, or you could face it and say, I'm not going to let this. I'm not going to let this event or events, my past experience, define me. I'm ready to create my life. Jung famously said, I'm not what happened to me. I'm free to choose who I become. And that's really the philosophy behind our mind-body system, the creative mind wellness, is that we want to help people see that their own potential for healing, their own potential for empowering themselves to use their mind to direct their body versus letting their body decide what it does to them and limits their life. And there's so much powerful research on this. And because of 70% of people that are traumatized, there's so much that's happening in the stress that's happening in our body that makes all these other things that occur, these dysfunctions, diseases, disorders like autoimmune disorders, and start to become an epidemic. Even chronic pain, an epidemic that's happening. And then the way they treat chronic pain is through the opioids, which created the opioid crisis. So it's not like the modern medicine has figured this out, and the ancients from thousands of years already had, and so why don't we tap into that wisdom of understanding who we really are, that we're not just the mind body, but we're a higher consciousness, a higher awareness.
Yeah, that's where the contribution of the Eastern wisdom traditions come in, and it's really revolutionary in this sense that we see that people are ready to accept these higher teachings. They're around. Basically, if you do a search on Google, you'll find thousands of sites that talk about these principles, and they work. Basically, yoga philosophy, for example, has been around for about 5,000 years because it works.
And it's not something that you have to believe. It's not a religion. It's something that you actually get a direct experience of by examining your mind, examining the principles and saying, does this make sense? And testing it out.
Yeah.
And but I think the main thing that we teach is this idea that you're not the mind body. And so much of our life, we believe we're who we are. We believe we're a culmination of all our past experiences. we're this name, this our degrees, our relationship status, the money in the bank, our credit score, our level of success we achieved, our title if we work in a corporation. We define ourselves by all these external things that the mind body carries, our uniform, and we never really know what's beneath that part of us that is the mystery, right? The magic in us that is non-physical, non-tangible to the naked eye.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in coming episodes, we're going to be discussing other issues surrounding this mind-body. In psychology, it's actually called the mind-body problem because they can't figure out what it is.
Is it the mind first or the body? What comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, it's kind of that problem. And then in consciousness studies in the West, we know it's also talked about as the hard problem of consciousness, because the simple problem is simply to figure out how does the mind think and how does it process emotions and all that. We can figure that out. We can use neuroimaging now to look at what the brain is doing and how it processes all this information, but we can't figure out how it does it.
Like why? Like why is my brain processing information this way?
That too, yes. What animates it? What allows it to experience that subjective experience of our life? What we call our life. And it's still a mystery in the West, but Eastern traditions have a much more sophisticated way of understanding awareness and consciousness, and including that with the understanding that comes from neuroscience is the most powerful way we can work with the mind-body, because it addresses all levels of existence. The body, the physical body, the internal mind, its emotions, its meaning-making functions, as well as the spiritual elements of consciousness, awareness.
And mind-body coaching is not replacing traditional treatments. We never want to replace what the person, if you're in medical treatment, like you don't want to replace it. You want to complement it.
Absolutely.
You want to reduce how to work with your mind while you're getting the traditional treatment, so you heal faster. You have less pain. You can transcend and be free faster, and it's more of an acceleration. And really, I think if you're just treating the symptom and hoping the symptom goes away, but don't get the gift of that experience, it's like you suffered for nothing. So what if you can take that suffering and give it meaning? Give it like it's a doorway to your awakening, and that's a very valuable thing to have. Instead of pushing it away, you're now welcoming it in and saying, this was part of my experience, but it's not the whole part of my experience, and there's so much more to me.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get to some of the visualizations that you do.
Yeah. And tell some stories about what we've seen in this work, and people that have had really dramatic changes in their health because of it, and
hypnosis, meditation, visualization, guided imagery, dream work. All those go into this work with the mind body.
So we will see you next week for our next episode. Again, don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss this series. And our last words are that you're not broken, and that you are more powerful than you think. And we hope you be inspired to look deeper within to find your true nature and see who you really are.
See you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Stay well.
Bye-bye.